Welcome to our second presentation in the Decommissioning videocast series. Today we will hear about a comparison of stakeholder engagement strategies for offshore decommissioning projects in the UK and Australia. This will be presented by Tung, a PhD student at the university. This is a follow-on presentation from the first talk you heard 2 weeks ago by Ineke and Dean, and they talked about comparative assessment and stakeholder engagement. So please enjoy Aaron's presentation. Thank you.
A very good day to everybody. I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe in these uncertain times. My name is Tung. I'm currently a final year PhD student affiliated with both the University of Aberdeen and Curtin University. This presentation is entitled Comparison of Stakeholder Engagement Strategies for Offshore Decommissioning Projects in the United Kingdom and Australian Landscape. So let me start off this presentation with one fundamental question. Why do we engage stakeholders for offshore decommissioning? Is it regulation? Because the law asks us to do it? Or is it maximizing benefits? Because maybe the supply chain or another operator has a better idea or more cost-effective solution? Is it preventing losses? We engage to understand the risks, understand any incorrect decisions that we may make to prevent losses? Or is it corporate social responsibility? Is it our duty to ask people what they want out of this decommissioning project before actually undertaking the decommissioning project itself? What's interesting to me is that based on my research, based on the interviewees that I interviewed, 90% of them says it is because of regulations. Now, I welcome anyone who can prove me wrong or challenge this finding. But what my findings, 90%, what I found, this is a little bit scary because it suggests to me that operators do not see the value of engaging stakeholders for decommissioning. The good thing, however, is that because of these regulations, operators are engaging stakeholders. But despite engaging stakeholders, what happens is that we still see project overruns for decommissioning. There are still schedule delays that are occurring. And if you look at the UK, and particularly the Brentfield decommissioning project, stakeholders are pretty much very impactful. One way to improve the way stakeholders are currently being managed for offshore decommissioning is to understand the strategies that are being implemented by organizations in terms of stakeholder management. Why? By understanding the effectiveness of these stakeholder management strategies, organizations can be better informed and as such use the information to better plan future stakeholder engagement strategies for future offshore decommissioning projects. My PhD project focuses on two countries, namely the UK and Australia decommissioning landscape, and the locations were selected based off the location of my two universities. A total of 90 different decommissioning projects were being studied through case study. 40 semi-structured interviews were conducted with industry representatives from both the UK and Australia landscape. And at the end of the project, 2 stakeholder-oriented critical paths were being developed and analyzed. As you can see from the flowchart here, the project starts off with case study. It then moves on to semi-structured interviews and the development of stakeholder-oriented critical paths in the UK landscape. It then moves on to semi-structured interviews and the development of stakeholder-oriented critical paths in the Australian landscape. And at the end, all the results will be analyzed together. So in these presentations, I'll be focusing more on stakeholder engagement strategies, and the effects of these strategies. There's also another presentation in this podcast series that focuses on the analysis of stakeholder-oriented critical path itself. So you can have a look at that presentation if you are interested. So, findings from this research indicate that engagement methods are similar. We use multi-criteria decision tools, CA, the comparative assessment, the net environmental benefits analysis, the best practical environmental outcome, NEBA and BPEO. We engage with those stakeholder engagement workshops, one-on-one conversations with stakeholders, although to a varying degree of it depending on the organization. We share lessons through industry body events. For example, SciPam is sharing about the Miller decommissioning project here at OTC, and journal publications, and so on and so on. However, what I found is that the overall strategy is different depending on the company. So a decommissioning stakeholder engagement strategy of a company can be anywhere along the visibility spectrum. It can be high visibility or it can be low visibility. So just to give you a sense of the different strategies that I use, Northwest Hutton, the brand decommissioning, Dunley and Alpha, all these were done using a high visibility stakeholder engagement strategy. On the flip side, you have Maureen, Murchison, Muller, Ninian North, Playfair. All these decommissioning projects, they use a low visibility stakeholder engagement strategy. So what is a high visibility stakeholder engagement strategy or low visibility stakeholder engagement strategy, you might ask? So for high visibility stakeholder engagement strategy, as its name suggests, is a highly visible and the stakeholder engagement activities are high profile and highly visible to the public stakeholders. And it focuses more on the engaging mass engagement, which means you do more presentations, more group presentations rather than one-on-one conversations with each individual stakeholder themselves. So a very good example of a company that uses a high visibility stakeholder engagement strategy is the brand decommissioning program. Brand has extensive media coverage. They publish more than 18 videos on their websites on YouTube talking about the achievement, talking about how they're going to decommission the platform, and for example, the single leaf on brand Delta by using the Pioneer Spirit, the well plugging and abandonment campaigns, the successful well plugging and abandonment campaigns on brand Charlie. But the thing is, they did all these publicized media engagement, but part of their decommission program have not even been approved yet. A high visibility stakeholder engagement strategy does have its benefits. It improves the recognition and reputation in an industry. So for example, if you're doing a single lift using a Pioneer Spirit, you did a successful well plugging and abandonment campaign, once you publicize using a high visibility stakeholder engagement strategy, it will improve the recognition and reputation. And it also reduces the stakeholder engagement costs because you are focusing more on presentations, more on mass engagement, I would say, rather than one-on-one conversations with each individual stakeholder themselves. However, using a high visibility stakeholder engagement strategy, it attracts unnecessary attention. For example, and it also reminds stakeholders of bad experience. So for example, if you are bragging about your successful well plugging abandonment campaign to the world, all of a sudden, some public stakeholders may look at the news and go on, hey, wait a minute, aren't you the guys who was a few years back going to dump a spa into the ocean? So it reminds people of bad experiences. And also, using a high visibility stakeholder engagement strategy, while it may not be the original intention or may not be intended, it gives off the impression that you are behave arrogant. So a very good analogy that I would like to use is a Lamborghini. I love a Lamborghini, so it's one of my top dreams to get one. I probably might get one, a second-hand one, after I retire or something. But imagine if you are my neighbor and I come and tell you and share with you about the Lamborghini. The first time you might say, yeah, that's cool and an awesome car. Now imagine if I come to you every single day for 1 month. So what happens and what do you think is going to happen? So most probably something on the picture on the right. So people will get sick of it. So the more I tell you about my Lamborghini, the more you feel that I'm showing off, hence the arrogant perception. So it's the same with stakeholder engagement in the decommissioning setting. The more you are sort of publicizing your successes on media to the public stakeholders, the more arrogant your organization is perceived to be. Now on the flip side, you have a low visibility stakeholder engagement strategy approach. Now a low visibility stakeholder engagement strategy doesn't mean that you are doing less so that you are not visible. It means that low visibility stakeholder engagement strategy means that you are doing you're doing the stakeholder engagement activities in a way that it is less visible. So a low-key yet proactive approach. So it focuses more on one-on-one conversations, actively engaging targeted stakeholders rather than engaging stakeholders in a mass audience setting. So a good example of a decommissioning project that uses a low visibility stakeholder engagement strategy is the Miller Decommissioning project. So the Miller Decommissioning project here, they only have 2 videos, but these 2 videos, they didn't publish it at the start when they are engaging stakeholders. They only publish it at the end, a couple of months after the completion of the execution and closeout of the Miller Decommissioning project. So they were presented at the Decommissioning conference in San Andreas of 2018. I know because I was there at the conference. And another thing that the Miller Decommissioning project did a good job is that they address every single stakeholder comment individually. So a tailored approach to the stakeholders. So the benefits of a low visibility stakeholder engagement strategy is that it attracts less attention because it's less visible. And interesting thing is that it makes stakeholders feel more involved and feel more thought about. So I like to share this analogy with you by using these 2 pictures here. So for example, a mass approach or high visibility approach would be, I invite you all to my birthday party next week. So imagine I'm doing this online now, inviting you all to my birthday party next week, versus a low visibility approach that I come to you, every single one of you in the audience, and personally invite you to my birthday party next week. So just imagine now you as a person or as a stakeholder, just imagine which one would you prefer? Would you prefer me to invite everyone in one go, or would you prefer a personal invitation or personal message? So I'm not sure about you, but for me, of course, I prefer a personal message because it makes me feel involved. It makes me feel like, hey, this guy thought about me. And hence, I may make an additional effort to go to the party even if I'm not free. But the disadvantage of a low visibility stakeholder engagement strategy, of course, you need more effort. Just imagine I need to come to every single one of you. So more effort, more costs, and sort of the successes of it is less publicized. So for example, if I invite everyone, I stand in the middle of the audience, someone else, may hear about it. I may be on the news, but if I come to, every single one of you personally, it may not have that effect. So it's less publicized. Essentially, what I did is that I have a look at all 90 projects, from my case study, and I sort of come up with a simpler flow chart to determine the most suitable strategy for each of the decommissioning projects. So this sort of flowchart, or decision-making tool, if you like to call it, it looks at three main points: the level of past interactions with stakeholders. So how was the engagement between you and stakeholders in the past? The level of media coverage. This is a little bit different from the level of past interactions. A level of media coverage would be, for example, like the brand, whose name is quoted as the price of the oil, the price of oil in the stock market. That counts as the past media coverage rather than stakeholder engagements. And also the amount of components with high potential environment and social risks. So for example, if you look at Shell, that will mean the gravity-based storage cell. And here is just an example of the use of the tool. So if you look at brand, brand has brand spark, so that will be high in terms of level of past interaction with stakeholders. We have brand in terms of media coverage is exceptionally high because brand was quoted as oil price in the stock market. There's the brand pipeline system, and brand was one of the largest field in the North Sea, so it has a lot of media coverage. And in terms of social risk, amount of components with environmental and social risk, brand obviously have the gravity-based storage cells, which poses very high social risk. So essentially what this means that brands should have used a low visibility approach to target stakeholders and engage them individually. However, they actually done a high visibility approach. Their approach was because there are too many stakeholders, they want to just engage in a more general fashion rather than individually. If you look at another one that I like to share with you, the Miller. So Miller has less significant stakeholder interactions in the past. And in terms of media coverage, it's not really being covered much. Although I would have to say the new facility, the Clare Ridge facility, owned by BP, that would put it in the high media coverage region. And in terms of the components and with environmental and social risks, it is low because we are only dealing with the steel structures rather than gravity-based structures. So overall, what this shows that Miller can use a high visibility one, but they chose to opt for a low visibility one because that it was the usual approach taken by BP to engage stakeholders. So just a couple of examples to show you how the flowchart can be used. So in conclusion, I just like to share you a couple of takeaway points from these presentations. The first point is that I encourage operators to be sensible. Relying on facts and figures alone, they don't tell the whole story. Especially when I look at the UK decommissioning landscapes, a lot of operators, they like to rely on the use of the comparative assessments, the facts and figures in the assessment to engage stakeholders. But the comparative assessment, the facts and figures, they only tell you what people should want, what people should not fear. They don't tell the human side of the story. They don't tell what actually people want. They don't tell you what actually people fear. So even if a comparative assessment says it's safer to leave it in place, for example, a very good example, the mooring decommissioning platform. The actual decision made for the mooring decommissioning platform was actually to remove, and this goes against facts and figures. And another point I'd like to share is that I encourage operators to be more considerate, especially with regard to the consideration of the psychological effects of your decisions. So for example, if you take a look at stakeholder engagement, if you hold a meeting in a nice room, serve nice food in a hotel, versus if you're holding it in a small church, for example, no catering, no food, the action alone, it gives off an impression to the stakeholders whether you like it or not. And this will have an impact on the effectiveness of stakeholder engagement. So I'd just like to share with you a speech that I heard from Carl Martin, a valedictorian from the King's Academy in the US. So in his speech, he shared that there are a lot of people they overlook relationship for money, for power, for fame. So I'm not sure about everyone, but it kind of struck a chord with me, and I can't help but draw some parallels to decommissioning. So in oil and gas organizations, a lot of them are focuses on their goals, and they are overlooking relationships with contractors. They are overlooking relationship with the stakeholders, the environmental NGOs, and the regulators. So operators, you really need to consider, especially for decommissioning, is it worth stopping funding for an environmental NGO? A couple of months before the decommissioning program, is it worth to lobby the government and ruin the relationship so they can leave infrastructure in place? And is it worth, ruining the relationship between you and a contractor so that the operator can have their way of doing the decommissioning? So rather than just focusing on getting decommissioning done at the lowest cost, perhaps the better approach to decommissioning is to build and focus on the relationship. So one of the questions that I get, especially from interviewing people across the UK and Australia landscape, one of the conclusions that I get is that stakeholder impacts during decommissioning projects is basically a reflection of the relationship status between an oil and gas operators and its stakeholders. So that's something for operators to think about. So thank you very much for your attention. I would like to personally acknowledge all three of my supervisors, Professor Fran Ackerman, Professor John Patterson, and Professor Klaus Otto. I would also like to acknowledge the Curtin University Oil and Gas Innovation Center for funding my PhD project. So the Curtin University Oil and Gas Innovation Center is a research center for oil and gas based in Perth, Australia. And we conduct research in various areas, including carbon sequestration, energy policies, reservoir management, infrastructure integrity, late life asset management, decommissioning, and gas processing optimization. So we welcome anyone from the industry who are interested in working with us. And for more information, please feel free to contact Professor Klaus Otto, the director of the Curtin University Oil and Gas Center. And his contacts are here, available on this slide. Thank you all once again, and stay safe wherever you are.